Hello, this is Sheila Bender, and you are listening to In Conversation, discussions on writing and the writing life. Today we have with us in the studio Anna Quinn, who is a writer and the owner of the Writers' Workshop and Imprint Books in Port Townsend, Washington. She has 30 years of experience teaching and leading writing workshops across the country. Her own writing has appeared in various literary journals and texts, including Literature Circles and Response, Practical Aspects of Authentic Assessment, Instructor, Tide Pools, Is Literary Magazine, Manifestation, and LitFest Anthology 2016. She was also awarded the 2015 Patron of the Arts in Port Townsend, Washington. Anna's first novel was recently acquired by Blackstone Publishing and will be published sometime in the next year. Anna believes art and writing are transformative and that everyone has a remarkable story to tell. Welcome to the program, Anna.
Hi, Sheila. Thank you for having me.
I am so excited to talk with you, especially now when you've had the fabulous news that a novel you've been working on for a while has been accepted by a fabulous publisher, Blackstone Publishing. Mm-hmm. And I know that there's much ahead for you.
Yeah.
Maybe we could start by learning what you think is coming down the pike.
It's been an exciting couple of days. Yesterday was my birthday.
Happy birthday.
The day before that, my husband and I were going to take a retreat, and on Friday, I received the news that my book announcement was in Publishers Weekly. I was waiting for that announcement because I couldn't tell my friends, or even though I did tell you, I couldn't really make it official until it was official in some other mode. So Publishers Weekly did it, and it was pretty fantastic to see it in the magazine.
Yes, it was, and you shared it on Facebook, which was fabulous.
It feels very dreamlike. Yesterday, then, actually on my birthday, I received my first check.
Whoa!
It actually came on my birthday.
You mean then you get the rest of it when the book is out?
Right. Yeah. So half of it upon signing and half of it when the hardcover comes out.
So can you retire and be a full-time writer now?
I can't quite retire. I wouldn't want to leave the bookstore. It's nice. It felt very honoring. I'm excited to be with Blackstone.
Good. Good. So I know that you've told me as we warmed up for the program that because of the bookstore and because of the writers that you bring in to read and to teach, you've heard a lot of history of how this goes from signing of the contract forward. Mm-hmm. So tell us what you think might be happening.
It's a really intense process of going from when you finally finish a draft that you're ready to submit to where I am right now. I'm glad that I didn't really know all those steps exactly, because you might give up. And there's still more ahead. So the next step is I'll be meeting with the editor, and the first one will be a Skype. She lives in Brooklyn, New York, and she will share her insights and observations and then send me a full edit. And as I watch the other writers and authors go through our store and I meet them and I can talk to them, I know that can mean anything from a very light edit to completely restructuring your book. I know from my agent that they are not planning on restructuring the book, that it feels like there's very little to change. I hope that's true. I'm willing to do anything, though, that stays true to the story. I'm very grateful to have an editor of that quality, and it's exciting to me because she was an editor at HarperCollins and really seems to understand the content, so I'm excited.
It's very exciting. Mm-hmm. When you said if you knew everything that was ahead of you, you might have given up. Can you think of one or two things that really were hard parts of the journey?
The hardest pieces for me involved waiting. I was trying to think of a word that defined this whole process, and patience is one of them, but waiting even more so, because I know it kind of means the same thing, but patience has a little more Zen quality to it. Waiting feels like there's some stress attached, and I am not a very good waiter. When you first send your query letters out, for example, then you are waiting anywhere from a day to months to years, waiting for a response. And I had told myself that I would send out 250, and I chose that 200 query letters first because I'd heard, I think it was from Amy Tan, said at one point that with Joy Luck Club, she had sent it out 250 times before she had a hit. And then there's kind of a rule of thumb. If you send out 40 and you get a rejection, then you should redo your query letter. If you send out 100 and you're still getting rejections, redo your novel.
And what happened to you?
I really organized myself. I had a big spreadsheet, and I selected all the agents that I thought would be a good fit. I researched them. I looked up what they liked to read and to see if my book would be something they'd like to read. I sent out 10 a day, and it was really my 12th query that I got a response pretty fast.
Is that the agent you chose?
That's the agent that I chose, yeah.
Did you ever hear after that from others and have to tell them the bad news that they couldn't represent your book?
I did.
Excellent.
There was waiting for that. And then the most of the waiting came with actually working with the agent. It was hard for me because when there would be interest in the book and he would tell me about the interest and I'd say, oh, take that, do it. And he said, no, we're going to hold out. We're going to hold out. I can do better for your book than this and this and this. It was excruciating for me. And he said, this is why you have an agent. Because you probably, and he's right, I would have taken the first offer that came along. And he really calmed me and said, nope, it's going to happen. It's going to happen. But there came a point when I just thought, if it doesn't happen soon, I'm going to have to figure something else out. And then it happened.
Isn't that the way, though? Just when you finally really do sort of feel hopeless.
Yeah.
I've described you to you as a patient writer, and you are describing the difference between patience and waiting. It seems to me that when we're writing, we can afford to be patient and Zen-like because we're in control. Mm-hmm. But when we give that book over to the forces that be to get it published, we're at their behest. Mm-hmm. We're waiting for something to unfold that is different than waiting for our characters to unfold. What do you think?
I think that's very true. Yeah, I felt like I'd lost all control.
So I think you might have already been at work on something new, and maybe that helped. Can you talk about that?
That was advice I received often from other authors, is just get started right away on a new piece. And I did. So I'm working on a second novel, and I love it. I love to work on it. It's completely absorbing me, and it helped me get through that year of waiting.
That Year of Waiting. What a great title.
Yeah, titles are tricky. I know in Publishers Weekly it says that my novel is called Split, but it sounds like just recently, because a movie came out called Split that has similar themes in it, they were going to want me to change the title.
Oh, so you know that already?
It's okay. I actually feel all right about that. So I just I'm going to be coming up with some new titles.
Yeah. And maybe you'll be working with your editor on that and get some input.
Yeah.
Sounds
really
good.
Exciting.
Well, it's very exciting, and I still believe you to be a patient person. I know that your method of teaching requires patience, and it teaches people patience, that the better thing is to put out a really good piece of writing and not to rush things to the public because you regret it later when it's not good enough. So, and I know you teach that. So I want to ask you some questions about teaching others to write. Where should we start? I mean, what do you think is the most important thing a writing teacher or coach can do for a writer?
To establish trust. And I think in the workshops, that's the most important thing to me, to establish trust among the participants. And then there's so many pieces after that. But I think that's incredibly important. And we often talk about cherishing yourself and be kind to yourself throughout the process, because we know artists in particular can be very tough on themselves, especially when doubt comes in, and it always finds a way in through the cracks. And so we spend time, how do you talk to yourself through doubt? What do you really know? Whose voice is that anyway? Because we're not born with that voice. If it's really intense for someone, I'll have them identify the voice and write through it so they're clear and they can keep as much as possible touching into their deepest self.
And when we say trust, what is it that the writer has to learn to trust in a teaching setting or a participant in a workshop? What are the things that people come in mistrusting?
Well, I think many people come in not trusting their own voice and their own words. They're wondering if their words matter. They're wondering if they are worthy of putting their work on the table. It's all about really building confidence.
Yes, and I think when you work with a group of writers, you begin to have to trust that they're not going to batter your vulnerability. I think that you're right. It's trusting yourself and your own voice and your own language. And to do that, you really need people around you who want you to trust it.
Right. So in a strong group, in a strong writing group, amazing things can happen. In a strong writing group, confidence can swell. And when confidence grows, then your writing starts to improve and you start to take more risks, which you really want to be able to do as a writer. Mm-hmm. And you start playing in your imagination more, and you try all kinds of new things when in a strong group, when people are there to bring out the best in your writing, not to tell you how to write and how you should write and if it's good or bad. They're completely focused on, okay, what is Sheila trying to say here? What does she really want to say? What is the truth under this? How can we help her get to that? And so that's in a strong group. And then that builds us up as writers, because I really believe in focusing on what works. We learn so much more than when we focus purely on what isn't working. And then when something isn't quite working, just how you say it respectfully and helpfully without it becoming harsh. And those would be the groups that you run from.
Mm-hmm. Or where they're being harsh.
Too harsh, or it just feels like we all can sense when there's a big ego in the room. And we know this isn't right. And some people feel like, oh, that's how I learn. I'm going to learn from this person. And maybe they will. But overall, you're not going to learn from somebody that is trying to change your writing into what they perceive it should be.
Which is a way that a lot of us experienced from teachers. Mm-hmm. And it does quiet you, maybe forever.
Yeah, it shuts you down, right.
Yeah. So your workshops and the people you invite to do workshops do a great service to the writing community here because of that attitude. I've worked with a lot of people who are in the 40s and 50s, 60s, who are just coming back to writing because a professor in college told them they could never be a writer because they weren't good enough.
Right.
I think as writers, in a way, you never feel good enough because you're always beginning something new. You're always wondering if what you put out there has a real audience, even if it's published by a good publisher. Is that, are people going to really get it and want it? And what's it going to do for their lives? There's a lot of unknowns. And so I think that it's important to meet with your tribe and kind of...
It is. Yeah. Writing is highly emotional and intellectual at the same time. And it's intense work. So to have a community, I think, is so precious and helpful.
Do you ever ask yourself, or have been asked, why do you do this?
Yeah.
I don't mean help others. I mean, why do we write?
Yeah. Why does any artist do what they do? I feel like we're just compelled to, really. But for me, I've been in love with it since I picked up a pencil. I've been in love with creating worlds, just absolutely head over heels.
And she's got a great big smile, and I believe her. So I know that Anna came today with some writing that I think will illustrate some of being head over heels with writing. And Anna has a blog, which you can tell us about, and then we'll hear your writing.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I'm not sure the piece shows love, but...
Well, we'll find out. But, I think, honestly, that all writing shows love, a love of being alive, no matter how hard it is to be alive in a world that has harshness and cruelty and unknowns. When we write, we're actually celebrating life.
I agree with you. It's that cherishing of life and others and self. It's taking that risk to put your voice out there and join in. But it's tricky. It took me a long time to come out publicly with my writing.
How long?
Well, when I wrote for magazines for education, that was nonfiction, and that wasn't scary to me. It's what I was a teacher. I knew what I was doing. I felt very confident. To come out with my personal work, that took me a decade. And you just kind of put your toe out. You try a little bit, and I would go to a writing group and put something out. And, Nancy Rico was one of the teachers I first had, and she was very helpful and supportive. And then you try again, and you keep putting more and more out there. And then experimented on social media. And I thought, well, I'll try a blog. It was a lot of baby steps for me to keep putting the work out there.
Well, they're actually big steps, I think. But now that you mentioned the blog, how do people get to the blog to read the pieces?
It's just AnnaMQuinn.com. And it's M as in Margaret.
Thank you. It's worth seeing. Beautiful pieces. You. So now we're going to hear one.
You are listening to KPTZ 91.9 FM, Port Townsend. In case you just joined us, you are listening to In Conversation with Sheila Bender, discussions on writing and the writing life. Sheila is talking with Port Townsend resident Anna Quinn about the road to publication and her work with aspiring writers.
So this was something I wrote for the Writers Resist about a month ago. It's called Contemplative Warrior. Lately, I've been thinking about contemplation and its role in activism. In a period of political urgency, when there's so much work to be done, how much time can we afford to spend in reflection about what's working and what's not? But can we afford not to give deep consideration to our emotions and motives? Will a lack of contemplation cause us to drop into the very groupthink and confirmation bias that may have been partially responsible for getting us here in the first place? Will it cause us to skim over analysis and critical evaluation because we relish feeling tight and right with those on our side? Is our constant outward participation undermining our confidence and capacity to create new solutions? Once the election cycle officially began in 2015, like many of you, I spent a significant part of my daily life campaigning, debating, doorbelling, obsessively reading the news, and worrying about people losing their dignity and basic rights. Since the bolt from the blue bombshell of November 8th, I've pushed myself fast and hard through the grieving cycle in order to write senators, participate in protest, sign petitions, and research the facts of an endless breaking news cycle. But amidst all this external movement, I felt myself neglecting an underlying level of power, the power that grows from taking time to deliberately review what's going on. Obviously, during this presidential campaign, social media provided an ample platform for political dialogue, and there's no denying the value in it. But far too often, when someone bold dared to question a concept, dared to cast doubt, there was an immediate piling on of those on the same team as the original writer, as though we'd all forgotten the best path to truth was to disprove our hypotheses, not prove it. I also realized, whether it was out of fatigue or despair, that I'd become less likely to consider the dissenter's opinion as well, and too quick to press like. When I was 19, I spent several months teaching in the Havasupai village in the basin of the Grand Canyon. I met a woman named Maya there. She was a local artist and spiritual instructor with spectacular green eyes and long disheveled red hair. Her gentle ease and confidence caught my attention immediately. Maya must have seen the sadness and anxiety I carried, because she spoke with me frequently about the power of contemplation. She taught me contemplation was a simple practice, a way of listening and witnessing, of using all the senses as a way to observe self and others without an agenda. It's not avoidance, nor apathy, nor navel-gazing, she said. Gaze not to improve yourself. Gaze for no particular reason beyond breathing in compassion. Maya took the art of contemplation even further, saying that there was no such thing as a separate self. The self, she said, was yet another construct, an illusion, a story we tell ourselves, while the truth is we are all residing in the movement of a single heart. She said that even jerks are part of the heart. They bring issues to the table we've been avoiding, issues that need attention and healing, that jerks offer us opportunities to be fearless and face our discomfort. Take time to contemplate other perspectives, she said, and then proceed with love and strength. And don't forget this, she said, opening her arms wide to the lime green of Havasu Falls, the little bells on her bracelets jingling. This land, this water, stay very close to this, she said, and you will have continual awakening. When Trump nominated Sessions to enforce civil rights laws, a man rejected for confirmation as a federal judge in 1986 after testimony surfaced of him saying the Ku Klux Klan was okay until I found out they smoked pot, I decided to take a media break. I retreated to the ocean for some serious soul-searching. For 3 days, I absorbed the force and curve and blue of water. I observed without any sentient exertion. And in and out of breathing ocean, I wrote. I wrote my heart out. I wrote pages and pages about my visceral loathing of Trump and my fury at those who voted for a narcissistic, misogynist racist because they might get a tax cut. I wrote how he stood for everything cruel and violating in my girlhood. I wrote about too many bodies, black, transgender, gay bodies gone, immigrants punished, in hiding, in crisis, and the time in my 40s when my ability to cope almost drowned me for real, and how I finally learned that crisis can provide a turning point, a chance to move in a new direction and create a fundamental shift of perspective. I wrote that maybe I read my kids too many fairy tales and too much poetry, when instead maybe I should have taught them to stand up to rubber bullets and water cannons. I wrote about my whiteness and the undeserved privilege of staying comfortable in my little, mostly white town, where I could walk anywhere I wanted without the fear of being threatened because of my skin color. And then I wrote horribly uncomfortable pages, sentences like, what if Trump is the thing that changes us for better? Because there's no way we can turn away now because we're so woken the blank up. I mean, we lost to Donald Trump. What if he, as the identified patient, the one in a dysfunctional family unconsciously selected to act out the family's inner conflicts, the one who's the split-off carrier of the family disturbance, pushes us out of adolescence into adulthood? Because what if Hillary Clinton had won? If Hillary Clinton had won, what would we be doing right now? Would we have called 5 senators before breakfast and be fighting this hard for human rights and economic equality and the uncontrolled abuses of the environment? I'd like to think so, but sadly, I doubt it. Is it possible that this precarious time will finally make us look hard at ourselves? I mean, we can hate on Trump all we want, but maybe we should also acknowledge our own screw-ups and confusions and selfish desires. Maybe it's time we refuse to look away and work on finding out what's underneath thousands and thousands of Democrats changing their registration to Republican since the start of 2016, and 53% of white women voting for Trump. And what about the 46.6% who didn't even vote? I'd like to say when I came out of hiding, I'd had some profound new ideas, like constructive alternatives to dismantling the incoming oligarchy. But no. However, I did surprise myself with one thing. I thought I'd come out unclouded and calmer, but instead I came out unclouded and more outraged, blood boiling, ready to stare the beast down in steel-toed boots, ready to double down on the resist and do whatever it takes to protect the environment and prevent the vulnerable from being trampled, made invisible. In the midst of the Iraq War, John Sweeney, then president of the AFL-CIO, who sought leadership opportunities for women, people of color, immigrant workers, and students, wrote in the Huffington Post, "If you're not outraged, you're not paying attention." Could contemplation be the soulmate to outrage? It's definitely part of learning to pay attention, to say nothing about how it opens up space for innovative solutions and dares us to reassess our assumptions, illusions, and avoidances. As for me, water and writing ignited an unexpected energy, a potent force that urged me into greater political action than ever before. Einstein famously said, "Problems cannot be solved with the same mindset that created them. We need to require a substantially new manner of thinking if humanity is to survive." I'm saying it's kind of essential to take time to sit alone at the beach, by a river, in a forest, or on a mountain. Fill yourself with the thing that supersedes all, the sacred breathing in of nature. Give yourself that permission. It may be the most necessary step to solving humanity's sufferings and the most potent step in proceeding forward with engagement, love, and strength.
Thank you, Anna. You are a patient person because it takes patience to go to the ocean and write for so many days and come up with something so important. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
And there are so many fronts on which to deal with destruction to the environment, destruction to people's health care, so many fronts. We need so many people to stand up.
Yeah, and a lot of people are standing up now.
Yeah.
It's wonderful.
And so many writers. I am addicted to the news like most people are now, and I am so impressed with so many writers. So we have a really important function, whether it's in creative nonfiction, an essay like yours, or novels. We have so much to say about the human condition, and we inspire. So this is important. So how is it running a bookstore and being every day in the company through all those books of many writers and through the public that comes in wanting a suggestion or coming after a particular book? How is that?
It's very exciting. It's wonderful. We listen to our customers quite a bit, and we are constantly getting great recommendations and comments about what we have, and people are very positive. I think we're just the right size for a bookstore right now.
What does that mean?
Well, we're small enough that we can sustain ourselves, and we live in a town that reads voraciously and really appreciates a book. We're just very fortunate, and they're so supportive of their local bookstores.
Yes, it's a very vibrant place.
It's amazing.
I don't know how many years ago now, maybe they're still saying, people don't read anymore, people only read short things, everybody wants short things. And yet kind of isn't true, because you have people who are reading whole books, obviously, and children. You write a lot from time to time on your Facebook page about what kids say when they come in.
We get a lot of children. Most of the kids that come in, they have their own punch cards. You get a free book after 12 cards, and they pull it out of their little pockets. And lots of kids, and they hang out in the kids section for hours. And then parents will look around, and there are lots of people reading books. We sell far more books than we ever dreamed of. So it's happening. People read, and this current administration is really pushing that too, because we have a gigantic section in our store now on books to help you through the next 4 years. And we're cautionary tales. In the prior time, Philip Roth's and James Baldwin. Everybody's reading James Baldwin now, and Sinclair Lewis and
1984.
Alice Walker. All the different books written about peace and how we can move towards peace and love. And it's a vibrant
and it sounds
literary
like
time.
A healing place to be in your bookstore, surrounded by people's interest in progressive issues.
Yeah.
That's good. That's encouraging. People read all kinds of things. I mean, there's so much reading online as well. Huffington Post and Raw Story, and there's just so much available that it's really hard to think that people think our nation doesn't read. I think we read.
I do too.
Yeah.
I believe we do.
Yeah. We have to believe that here because that's our evidence, right? So is there anything else you'd like to tell us before we close our conversation today? Something encouraging to writers or readers or entrepreneurs?
Oh, gosh. I just would say keep writing and stay true to your writing and keep digging in and finding out what matters to you most of all so that you can protect that and write about it and write what you most want to say. Write the thing you want to hear. Write the thing you want to read. Write that thing. You can do it.
Yes, I believe
Just
you.
Never give up.
I think we can follow your advice about going to a place where we can contemplate. We have forests. We have water. We have so many places outside of coffee houses where we can connect with nature and have the experience of something like you did, where you really write to that place of new inspiration and new knowledge. So
yeah, we're very fortunate here to be so surrounded by nature.
We are. So I want to thank you so much for coming today.
Thank you.
And for reading your writing and telling us of your journey. And I'm especially struck with how you listen. You listen to whether you read it, Amy Tan, and what she had to do to find an agent, how many letters to send out, or whether you hear it in person from another writer and really take sustenance from our tribe.
I couldn't do it without them.
Yeah. Thanks again.
Thank you.
In Conversation is produced by Sheila Bender and edited by Charlie Fleischman.